Engineering went to work to design the 30K and 60K to be easy like the residential inverters.
Commercial customer that's already had PV on the roof for 5 or 6 years. This is a very easy way for them to add storage to it.
I'm excited to dive in because there are some questions that I certainly have, and I know that our team will have too.
And this is the standard wiring diagram for the Sol-Ark. You can see our connections to the grid. You can see our connections to the generator.
Hi, this is John Weiber with EcoDirect. We are here at the Sol-Ark booth with Andy, who's the West Coast salesperson. Andy, what are we standing in front of here?
This is our latest and greatest Sol-Ark 30K native three-phase 208-volt hybrid inverter. So just like we have our residential inverters, the Sol-Ark 5K, 8K, 12K, and 15K, this inverter has all of the same features and same capabilities. However, it is specifically designed for 208-volt three-phase service. So we're really excited about this product. If you're out in the world and you're thinking about every single small office building, auto shop, fast food restaurant, pharmacy, you need to keep things cold. You have maybe medicines. This is a very common question from pharmacies. I have a big fridge. I need to keep medical grade equipment or some type of medication cold. Can't lose power. We need to keep all of our data systems up and running. A lot of customers out in the West Coast especially, they're facing time of use or demand charges that are just crushing their bills and their bottom line. You can use this inverter to pull power from batteries at nighttime, and that way it'll save you a whole lot on your bills. And then it also doubles as a generator replacement. It has the same 4 millisecond transfer time as our residential inverters, so you'll never lose any data, never have to reboot your computers in a backup situation. It's a very powerful piece of equipment. And
So this not only pushes power back to the grid, what size array would you be able to add to this solution?
Sure, so this inverter will take up to 39 kilowatts of PV solar on the DC side, and you can also AC couple more solar on the AC side. Now, there's some nuance about how much AC and DC can be coupled at the same time. You can always call our engineers at 972-575-8875. They'll be happy to answer. But suffice to say, if you have an existing solar array and you want to AC couple, you can do that. If you have a brand new install, you just take up to 39 kilowatts of PV, go right into our MPPTs here, and you can do it that way as well. So I hope I answered your question.
Commercial customer that's already had PV on the roof for 5 or 6 years, this is a very easy way for them to add storage to it.
Yes, correct.
Is there any preference or guidance that you give for types of storage? Is it lead acid, lithium only? Like how does that work?
Yeah, sure, great question. So to answer the first comment about lead acid, when we're working with this inverter is a medium to high voltage battery compatible inverter. That's different than our residential inverters, which are 48 volt nominal low voltage inverters. When working with a low voltage inverter, it's much easier to do open loop with lead acid or a battery that may be off-brand that just, it doesn't already communicate with the solar. However, when working with medium to high voltage batteries, for safety, you have to have a battery that can communicate with the inverter closed loop, and it needs a battery management system. So lead acid is probably not going to be an option, but with lithium, it would be a medium to high voltage option that would communicate with the Sol-Ark. And many of our existing battery partners on the low voltage side already have an option on the medium and high voltage side. So
what is that voltage range, and is there an advantage to going to a higher DC voltage if a customer is trying to decide?
The 30K will work between 300 and 600 volts nominal for battery, and our 60K inverter, which is a 480 volt service, which is coming out in Q2, that'll be pushing past about 800 volts, so it'll be between 600 to 850 volts nominal. And one of the advantages for high voltage is, well, when you have a lot less current, because there's that inverse relationship, higher voltage, lower current, or maybe lower voltage, higher current, you don't need as much copper. It's much more cost effective. You can run lines much longer, and there's some safety factors involved with that as well.
So with a traditional PV array, is an installer, or sorry, is an owner of a three-phase grid tie system, if they want to AC couple, are they going to have to do anything special or different, or is it just some slight wiring that would occur to get the Sol-Ark integrated in with a high voltage battery pack?
It's really not high voltage or low voltage, a question of difference in complexity. It's simply how the two products are designed, their engineering. We still have bidirectional communications right here, just like we have with our low voltage 15K and our 12K and 8K. So the homeowner, or in this case, we do actually a lot of high-end homes, so I said homes that are on three-phase service. Yeah. We're talking like your big, like we coin them McMansions, yeah, you know, this kind of home. So we do, but the vast majority of small business owners, the install is not going to be that much different than a residential inverter when it comes to the plug and play aspect of working with a battery. There's these battery ports here. The programming parameters are the same. Engineering went to work to design the 30K and 60K to be easy like the residential inverters. So we have thousands of DIYers out there. Yeah. And again, we love the DIY community because that goes back to the essence of who we are as a company. We wanted to design a product that was easy enough for the DIYer. So if you have an electrician, and I'm talking to the business owners out there, pretty handy, this is something that they would probably be able to install with one of our battery partners with just a plug and play communication. And so I hope that answered your question, Jeff.
And how soon can we start expecting to see this product out on the market?
The 30K is already available.
Nice.
So we're accepting orders. The batteries are already out there. We're making a couple of tweaks on some of the communications and the BMS testing. So that should be done. Let's see, it's February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. It should be done, I'm thinking, within the next couple of weeks to a month. Awesome. So I hope I hope that answers everybody's questions. If you have questions about us, you go to our website, sol-ark.com, and EcoDirect. Thank you for having us here.
Absolutely. And I want to thank everybody for seeing us through this video. If you are interested in doing an upgrade to your existing grid tie system and adding storage to it to attack some of those time of use we see in California, Arizona, Colorado, and other states, this is a very easy way to do that with three-phase. Or if you're a new customer looking to actually do a full project, this is a very easy way to bring in some serious power to offset those power bills. So feel free to check us out at www.ecodirect.com.
Hey everyone, if you have questions or are interested in purchasing the Sol-Ark 30K inverter, EcoDirect is here to help. We are an authorized Sol-Ark distributor with decades of experience in designing and supplying solar and storage projects. Visit our website ecodirect.com to place an order online or call our toll-free number at 888-899-3509 to speak with a project specialist. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. If you're an installer, be sure to ask about our wholesale accounts.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today, going through this time. Luis, you want to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for joining this webinar. We're going to be presenting some exciting new products for Sol-Ark. This webinar is going to be about C&I, so commercial and industrial products. And yeah, definitely we're going to be talking about solutions, three-phase systems, and how the systems can work and help you with your energy needs. And yeah, thank you to EcoDirect for putting this webinar together, especially to Renee Donaldson. And yeah, we have Dustin Douglas for Sol-Ark. My name is Luis Vasquez. I'm also with Solar Engineering here at Sol-Ark. And for Endure Energy, we have Eric Smithers. And yeah, thank you for joining us. Renee, thank you for joining. And yeah, if you have any questions during the webinar, you can write those in the chat, or we're going to have, of course, a session for questions at the end of the webinar. So
I'm excited to dive in because there are some questions that I certainly have, and I know that our team will have too. So if it's recorded, we can certainly record it for everyone and then send it out to those that did register. I think there were a handful of folks that were on it, and we can certainly put it out to our installer base for next week. And I can check with you afterwards on like scheduling.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we'll go through it, and this will be recorded, so it will have all the nitty gritty and the fun stuff as we talk about. Any questions get asked.
we're introducing the 30K and the 60K, which is going to be our solutions for industrial and commercial applications. Right. So. All right, perfect. So yeah, we are Sol-Ark. We are of course. Sorry. Sorry.
You're stuck on a screen. It looks like you're stuck on the wiring diagram. So.
Oh, hold on. Right, perfect. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we are Sol-Ark. We are an inverter company, a hybrid inverter company. Our mission is to offer reliable and affordable energy independence for families and businesses. In this case, of course, we're going to be talking about what we can do for businesses, for light industrial and commercial applications. Of course, we have been having uh, enormous growth in the last 8 years, and our mission, or let's say our philosophy, is to have an all-in-one solution. Um, so, of course, we have a bunch of tools available for the design and for the operation of your system. We have things like solar panel sizing tool, which is very useful during the designing phase of any project. We can review your design. So if you have any questions, or if you have any, let's say, doubts about a specific aspect of your design, you can just send us a single line diagram, and the team is going to take a look at that diagram and make sure that everything is in order. We, of course, also have live engineering support 7 days a week. So anytime you can just give us a call if you have a specific question about either the design or the commissioning of the system, or even of course, the performance of the system. You can just give us a call, and we're going to be there to answer your questions. And finally, of course, you have ongoing monitoring and troubleshooting assistance. So let's say we have support through both the design, the commissioning, and the operation of the project. We have world-class customer support. We think that's one of our best qualities. Definitely, you can always tell that we're going to be there for you to support you either during the design, during the commissioning, or during the operation of the system. We have, of course, we cover all of the United States. There is a sales manager for each region of the country, and we have a very large network of installers that can help you with the installation or the design of your system. All right. So another thing that Sol-Ark really likes, or really aspire to, is to have a product, or to cover, let's say, the full solar energy space. So we want to have residential solutions, we want to have commercial solutions, industrial solutions, and we want to also have a couple of other products. So in this case, we're going to be focusing on the commercial and industrial applications, which are going to be in functionality very similar to the residential solutions. So if you already know Sol-Ark, you're going to see a lot of things that are very familiar, but definitely more robust and more powerful. So this is the Sol-Ark as I was saying before, it is an all-in-one solution. And like the thing, it is a hybrid inverter, but it is also an energy hub. It is the center of your energy storage system. Of course, we have high voltage MPPTs. In the case of the 30K and the 60K, we have 4 of them. You can connect 2 strings to each one of those, so an enormous amount of PV power can be connected to the Sol-Ark 30K and 60K. Of course, we can invert the power, and we can send the power to a high voltage battery in the case of the 30K and the 60K. We of course also interact with the grid, so these systems can work either connected to the grid or in an off-grid situation. We also have arc fault monitoring, which is something that not all products in this space have, and of course something else that not all products can integrate is a generator. So basically, you can have multiple layers of energy production, and yeah, it's very hard to lose power when you have a solar, because you have the solar power, you have the battery, you have the generator, you have the grid, and it is very rare that all of them fail. So yeah, definitely, if you want to keep power in any condition, a solar is a solution for you. All right, so this is the 30K. This is some of the most important specs that we're going to have for this particular inverter. We can connect up to 39,000 watts, 39 kilowatts of power to the Sol-Ark. In case if we want to do AC coupling, which is going to be, I think, something that's going to happen fairly often, we can AC couple up to 60,000 watts, and we're going to go back. Something that also was mentioned before in the Endure presentation is that we have the NEMA 3R certification. So these are rated to be in the outdoors. And well, of course, we can share this spec sheet for the 30K later if you want to look a little bit deeper into the specs. Now this is the wiring area. You can see the MPPTs on the left side, then the orange pins for the battery connection. And one of the most interesting aspects of the 30K and the 60K is that they are 3-phase. So both of them, the 30K and the 60K, are native 3-phase. So they're going to be interacting with a 3-phase grid. And of course, you can power your 3-phase loads, which are very characteristic of industrial applications and commercial applications. So native 3-phase for the Sol-Ark. For the 4K, that's going to be 480 volts and 277. We can do multiple voltages with the 30K. That's also very important. It is programmable, so we can be connected to a couple of different grids and different voltages. We can even adjust to very specific or less common voltages in Latin America and in Caribbean islands. So the voltage is going to be something that we're going to be flexible on, but definitely it's going to be a 3-phase inverter. Then we have, of course, the charge controller, which is super important. This is the interface with the battery, which is also super important for the energy storage systems. Having a good battery and being able to properly collaborate with that battery, it's I would say one of the most important parts of the energy storage systems. Of course, Endure Energy is, I would say, one of our closest partners. Like Eric was saying before, they are here in Sol-Ark headquarters, and that's very helpful for the integration and collaboration between the inverter and the battery. So the charge controller is 99% efficient. DC to DC conversion is super efficient, so very little losses of power. In this case, since we're going to have a high voltage battery, closed loop communications are going to be required. And yeah, that's another reason why a close collaboration with the battery manufacturer is super important. And that's one of the biggest strengths that we have when we are working with Endure Energy. They are right next door, and we can have a very close collaboration with them. All right, like I was mentioning before, we have 4 MPPTs on the 30K. That's going to allow you a lot of flexibility if you have complicated roof geometry, if you need to have arrays facing different directions, or if you have, for example, shading conditions. 4 MPPTs are going to give you a lot of flexibility to let's say deal with those conditions. You can connect up to 2 strings per MPPT, and yeah, if you want to AC couple so if you have an existing system and you want to AC couple that to the Sol-Ark, you can easily do it, and we can go as high as 60 kilowatts connected to the Sol-Ark in AC coupling mode. Then we have the AC connections. So the Sol-Ark can be connected to a generator. Of course, that generator has to be 3-phase, and then we can use the same connection for smart load. Smart load is a function of the Sol-Ark that we can use to use the gen input as a load output. This is useful when we have, let's say, a full battery and the loads are not demanding as much power, but we have a lot of PV power available. We can send that power out of the battery through the grid breaker through the gen breaker to get a little bit more of capacity on the battery and be able to use all that PV power that we have available. Then, of course, we have the grid connection. Again, it has to be 3-phase. We are going to be able to interact with 120 to 40 volts, and of course, 208 volts, all of it 3-phase, and we can do either 50 hertz or 60 hertz. And this is the standard wiring diagram for the Sol-Ark. You can see our connections to the grid. You can see our connections to the generator. And then you're going to be able to have a main panel that's going to be directly connected to the grid, and then a critical load panel if you want to, let's say, separate your loads and make sure that some of them are covered in case of an off-grid situation. But maybe you want to keep some of those loads in the main panel because you don't want to, let's say, use your battery to cover those in an off-grid situation. Even if you separate those loads in an off-grid, even if you're going to separate those loads, you have the option to send PV power to both of those panels, as long as you have CT sensors installed. Then you can see, of course, the high voltage battery, which could be, of course, the Endure battery in the high voltage configuration when you have those batteries in series. And you can have both DC coupled solar power or AC coupled solar power. Stacking. Something else that I really like, and that's something else that Eric mentioned, is that we have updates. We can update the system over the air. So there's a lot of features that we can add over the air with just a software update. We can also use this function to troubleshoot problems and even add features in the future. So one feature that's going to be super useful is stacking systems. We're going to be able to stack up to 12 30Ks or 60Ks to have very large systems with storage. It is very important to mention that this is a function that at the moment is not available. That's going to be available very soon through a software update. And that's going to be free. All our software updates are free, and we add features like these very often. So all the hardware is ready. All you're going to need to stack the systems is going to be a software update, and this is going to be ready, I believe, in a couple of weeks, something like 2 months, the timeline for that particular software update. So yeah, stacking system is going to be possible with 30K and the 60K. So if your needs go beyond 60 kilowatts, you can easily stack 2 Sol-Arks, 3 Sol-Arks. You can go up to 12 Sol-Arks working in parallel.
Hi, Louis.
Yeah.
This is Renee.
Hello, Renee.
Hi, how's it going? If you could go back to the prior screen just for a moment, I have a question on that. So you're
Right.
taking the three Sol-Arks on the AC output side, and so their AC output is that landing on the AC input side of the Sol-Ark, like the commercial inverter? Is is that how I'm like seeing it? So like the one that's connected with the home grid and the larger commercial Sol-Ark.
Right. In that case, what we're having, if I'm not mistaken, is an AC coupled system, right? So basically, this is something that you could do. I don't think we would ever see one of the systems designed like this, but you can use AC couple one solar to another. So I think that that's what we are trying to demonstrate here.
So this diagram is mainly kind of just showing the AC coupling capabilities, where 315Ks could essentially get you the 208 nominal voltage, and then would allow you to get a balanced AC coupled solution. Now, granted, like Luis is saying, this is not something that we normally see on a daily basis, but it's just to kind of give you an example of kind of how the AC coupling works within the 30K.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you. I was curious about it because I wasn't sure why you'd want to do that design necessarily either. Although there might be.
Sometimes we've run into where people they already have the 15K, but or maybe they're trying to expand, but they don't want to have to buy an additional 15Ks. So this way, it would just allow them to at least increase their AC output, but also limit the amount of materials and equipment that actually would be needed. And that's kind of our goal, and why we've been pushing for kind of these 30 and 60Ks in the market space that they're in, is because there's not anything out there on the market that is fitting that space. And so we wanted to be flexible enough to kind of hit that smaller CNI market that's kind of left to the side, unfortunately, in the industry, and also have the ability to scale up to work in those larger CNI spaces. So it's kind of just trying to be a jack of all trades, or a Swiss Army knife, if you want to call it that, to be flexible and competitive with the needs of what the market is needing. So.
Yeah, no, that actually makes sense. Thank you, Justin. Because yeah, if they didn't want to add another three inverters, whether it was due to space or really due to funds, because it's less expensive to go with a single 30 kW, and
Yes,
yeah, that'd be a reason to do it like that. And yeah, the CNI space, we're coming after it, so that's why we're here today. Thank you for
Yeah.
thank you for your answer on that. That makes sense.
All right, perfect. So then this is the spec sheet for the 60K. Again, this is going to be available in more detail in the web page, but you can see, of course, that the name comes from the maximum amount of AC power that we can get from this inverter, 60 kilowatts. You can connect to up to 78,000 watts to this system. And yeah, of course, also outdoor rated, 10-year warranty, either 60 hertz or 50 hertz, and you can, of course, also stack them, like we mentioned before, with the 30K. So pretty much, I would say that the general idea, or the general, let's say, architecture behind the 15K, 12K, 30K, and 60K is very similar. So that's something that I really like. The installers that are familiar with the 15K or the 12K are going to be familiar. Of course, there's going to be some key differences. High voltage battery probably is going to be the biggest one. But in general, most of the features that you see in the 12K and the 15K uh, are still present in the 30K and the 60K. So this is the wiring area of the 60K. You can see the 4 MPPTs. You can see 2 connections for the charge controllers. Of course, also 3-phase native, and pretty much the same features that we have for the 30K. Then just to briefly mention, of course, these systems also are compatible with rapid shutdown, which is very important. Something that I would also like to mention is that we're going to have very soon our own rapid shutdown and optimizers. So that's something that you could also have with your Sol-Ark. And finally, I would like to show some pictures or some examples of how we imagine the Sol-Ark powering very large buildings, very large commercial buildings, and even light industrial applications.
If I could add to that, if you could go back to that real quick, just to kind of put in perspective for anybody, or go back to the photos if you don't mind. So the kind of the idea of market space, and again, the pictures being shown here, obviously you see kind of like a drive-through, restaurant, banks and things like that. That's kind of the market area that is being a little bit left alone. And we really see a lot of value in that market space, especially with all these incentive programs that are coming out and the IRA, the S-chip programs, anything that can help return the ROI. And especially too in a market that hasn't really seen, there's not really a design or an inverter on the market, at least that I've seen, to really where it kind of fits the needs of this area. There's ones that you can do a utility scale, and then there's obviously the residential side. But I just wanted to at least paint a picture of, those types of applications is really what this is geared towards, and really that's the type of market that we're trying to at least get ready for any type of battery backup, or at least have some sort of battery backup, especially for banks. And there's a lot of uh, grocery stores that we've been talking to that have been really looking at the 30 and the 60K to help provide that energy storage backup. So just wanted to at least clarify that, because I know there's a lot of talks about the different programs and things like that. So we want to give a little love to a part of the market space that feels that it's getting a little bit left to the side. So just wanted to share that two piece.
Thank you, Dustin, for sharing that. I'm glad that you did. Since you brought up the additional incentives on the CNI side, are there particular ones that you're seeing that really fit this particular use case, like for these later commercial systems?
So a lot of the trends that we've seen as far as, incentive programs, they're starting to adopt it into the CNI space. And just to kind of be bluntly honest, there's a lot more red tape and a lot more hurdles to get over as soon as you go over certain values, such as, I believe it's like 65 volts or higher. There's a lot more red tape that has to be taken in consideration. And one of the things that, especially for our system to operate in a safe fashion, we have to require communications with the battery, and also we do put a very strong stance on 9540. But a lot of the incentive programs, I don't see, they're really geared towards the residential area, but I don't see a reason why they wouldn't transfer that into the CNI space. And especially too, a lot of the customers that I've at least talked to in the recent months, a lot of them are getting hit with demand charges, and that's where a lot of this equipment is coming into play. They may not be going so much for the battery backup side of things, but they're really trying to reduce their amount of charge from the utility, or at least their demands from the utility. So I don't know of any incentive programs that are directly in the CNI space, but there has been a lot of transition, and at least through the AHJs we've been talking to that kind of govern these incentive programs, they've been kind of hinting at and asking a lot of questions about our 30 and 60K to make sure that it fits their requirements and their needs in that space.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're diving into that too. I know that there are some, but it seems like it's more like based on like demographics.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so much, unfortunately, it doesn't seem, and again, it just goes back to this part of the industry, or at least this part of the electrical side of things, it just hasn't got a lot of love. And so that now that there is a product that's kind of fitting into that space, obviously we could see a ton of increase in terms of incentive programs, because the demand for it is going to be so high. And especially too, utilities, they're going to want to get a piece of that action as well. So they'll get their hand in the hat one day or another. It's just a matter of time.
Yes, indeed. Kind of a little bit of a different question. Does Luis at the end mention optimizers and rapid shutdown? Is that specific for the 30 and 60K units?
So, yeah, to kind of hit on that front, we did partner with a company, and we are in the process of developing some hardware that will actually fit into the 12K, the 15K, and also into the 30 and 60. And essentially, what this does, it'll, in the long run, it'll remove the need for a transmitter, which is, I know, kind of been the bane of the existence for a lot of the rapid shutdown requirements, in making sure that you can get equipment in. I know there's a lot of, at least up in the air as far as product availability and being able to get your hands on it. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to remove one piece of that puzzle, So this device is essentially going to be replaced inside the inverter, but it does all the power line communications to the receivers. So that way you can use Tigo, you can use AP Systems, you can use just about any rapid shutdown receiver on the market that is SunSpec compliant, and that way we can already provide the rapid shutdown, certification or at least requirement through that means. So we're always trying to make things a little bit less of a requirement on the installer, or at least in terms of materials. The more we can kind of tie all that in, and also provide a, like I think Brianna said it best, a one-stop shop for any questions or any solutions. We want to be that solution. So and going vice versa to that, we will have our own rapid shutdown and optimizer. So tie not just the equipment inside the inverter, but also we will have a version of a rapid shutdown similar to Tigo and AP Systems that will provide the rapid shutdown solution and optimization if necessary.
Okay. When do you think that's going to be coming?
So the final parts for the internals of the system are being installed and tested as we speak. The design and everything for the optimizer portion should be done hopefully in the next couple months.
Okay. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Just additional revenue streams for you guys, and
Yeah.
providing like full system compliance. So that's awesome. We're on board.
Yeah, so just to kind of put in perspective, at one point in time, especially in the year 2023, we will have, we'll be selling just about everything but panels and batteries. And that's why we're really excited to work with a lot of these partners like Endure to really provide a really great solution. And so we want to be able to, answer any questions, and especially, we're broadening our atmosphere out as well, or at least our scope. And we're venturing off not just in terms of our products, but we're really trying to get into the nitty gritty and provide any solution possible for your projects. And whether we fit or not, we want to be sure that we can give you the answer on the make the best decision.
I love it. Yeah, that sounds awesome. Thank you, Dustin and Louis.
All right, great. Yeah, and maybe going back a little bit into some of the features that I really love and that I really think that are going to be very useful for the commercial and industrial space. Of course, the demand is going to be a very important part of the energy charges that commercial and industrial, let's say, load centers have. So, of course, the 30K and the 60K are going to have that grid peak shaving feature. So the solar can just sit waiting for those peaks that are going to increase that demand charge, and use the battery to completely, let's say, erase them, right? So that's going to be very useful to lower that energy bill. And of course, we're also going to have time of use to make sure that if you don't want to use energy during a very specific time of the day, because at that time the energy is more expensive, of course, you can use your Endure battery to avoid using that expensive energy. And of course, another feature that I really love when we mention banks is the transfer time, because the Sol-Ark is going to transfer super fast. We have a 5 millisecond transfer time, which means that very often not even computers are going to notice if the grid goes down. So pretty much the 30K and the 60K are also going to be a UPS, right? An uninterrupted power supply. So yeah, Sol-Ark 30K and 60K are going to be packed with features that are going to be very useful for the commercial and industrial space.
Question on that, and hopefully this is helpful for everyone else too. I know I'm just piping in here with a couple of questions, but for the UPS feature, that's unique to the commercial size, right? As far as like being able to specifically call it a UPS, like the 15K has a fast transfer time, but it's not actually put as a UPS. Is that accurate?
So whenever it comes to UPS, there's not really, at least I've done a little bit of research in terms of the certifications that classifies what is considered a uninterruptible power supply. And there's not necessarily one standard that kind of fits all, because there's not really like an NRTL that tests it for that standard. A lot of the times I've, at least from the readings that I've seen in documentation, it's been less than 10 milliseconds. Anything less than 10 milliseconds is usually classified as a UPS, but granted, that can vary all the time. And to be kind of, at least up front, there's not really a product in this kind of size for this space. Majority of the time when you're doing, this size or level, there's not really anybody that's integrating batteries. If they are integrating batteries, that usually involves an external transfer switch, which has its own transfer time, which is, you know, 15, 25, 30 milliseconds of something of that nature. But, there is nothing on the market to this date that I have seen that has the same transfer time as the 30 or the 60. And it is a slightly, a little bit slower. I think it's 5 milliseconds instead of 4 milliseconds, if I'm not mistaken. But still, that is pretty much lightning fast for any electronics to, not recognize. You're not having to reset your clocks. And especially like Luis kind of mentioned, any of the IT specialists, their servers aren't going to go down. They're not going to lose any revenue if there's any business that's being done in that front.
Okay. So it's just like, I guess it would depend on what you're applying it for.
Exactly. A lot of the time, most of any UPS is mainly on the smaller scale because they have outlets built into them, and there's only a certain number of power output that they're able to provide. Ours is a little bit different because it is kind of focused on a lot larger power range, and then on top of that, we do incorporate batteries, panels, and things of that nature. So it operates very similar, but it's to the same classification as the UPS. But again, there's at least I have not been able to find a NRTL or a testing lab that classifies what UPSs are.
Hmm. Okay. Fair enough. Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate that.
All right, perfect. So, well, again, this is just a quick comparison between 15K, 30K, and 60K. It's already 6 p.m., so maybe I'm just going to jump to the questions. Well, I definitely would like to go over the key takeaways for the 30K and the 60K. It is going to be a very versatile piece of equipment. It can work either grid-tied, off-grid. It can be retrofitted using AC coupling. There's going to be, of course, that um, collaboration with Enduro Energy, with the high voltage battery, working in closed loop communications, and the ability to send that battery power to the loads back to the grid, or to save it if you want to have the maximum amount of backup in an off-grid situation. So yeah, super a lot of versatility on the 30K. We can do a lot of things with it. Of course, it is also very simple. Like Dustin mentioned, you don't need an additional transfer switch, which is very useful. It's going to make the installation way easier, fast and powerful. It's a very large machine with a lot of power. Free monitoring. You're going to have all the features that we already mentioned: time of use, peak shaving, uh, and of course, we are looking forward to be able to use those incentive programs. Of course, we're going to have all the certificates necessary for the installation of this particular product, and world class support. 7 day a week, you can just give us a call, and there's going to be somebody ready to help you either with questions on design, with the commissioning on the system, or with troubleshooting. Yeah. Um, uh, I don't know if that's it. So I would like to just check if there's any questions that we could ask. Answer.
Hello, can you hear me? This is Max.
Hi, Max.
Hey everyone, thanks for the presentation. I had a question that um I don't know if we need to dive into all of this right now, but just something to bring to the conversation as far as integrating this inverter system into like a more comprehensive microgrid, like where we're dealing with multiple generation and storage sources. Um, I was curious about um, how the how this inverter would function in that sort of scenario with an external microgrid controller in order to supply power to like an entire into an external bus, like where it would be receiving power also. So effectively like having the grid input um like being able to output in that way too, um, like would there need to be some sort of external power source that would kind of like create that grid, create that frequency in order for the solar to function in that way? Would the solar need to be in grid following mode in order to output power through the grid input?
No, not necessarily. I mean, that application I mean, I wouldn't necessarily go about it. For some reason, Max, I feel like you and I talked about this, and I feel like this was a conversation that we've had maybe not too long ago, but maybe I'm mistaken. Um, but as far as the application, the system itself is a grid forming device, so there is not
Right.
necessarily a requirement to have a grid to help provide power output. The problem is though is it all becomes down in terms of the application, because when you're talking about in terms of a microgrid, you're usually treating the inverters as kind of like a substation or uh, something of that nature, a distribution
Mm.
panel of some sort, and
Right.
then you have the different houses connected to that panel, or at least connected to that output. In that case, no, there's not really a need for an additional grid source. I mean, obviously, I would probably suggest having like a generator of something, just in terms of backup capabilities for prolonged outages or at least bad days of production. But to answer your question in the long short, no, there's not really a requirement to have a grid to help do kind of like a microgrid application. The system itself is grid forming. It
Well,
really
I guess I think you're misinterpreting my question a little bit because like I understand that like the inverter itself like has the capability to create its own microgrid, like it it can supply all the loads like attached to it. I guess what I'm curious is in like a like a larger microgrid application where like the Sol-Ark and the batteries connected to it aren't the only like source for generation
right.
uh and storage, and like where there's like let's say for instance like there's an external generation source of AC wind turbines, and there's also another storage component like a hydrogen fuel cell or um just for sake of example, like there could be other things that we could be dealing with for either of those alternate sources. um but I'm thinking of um kind of like a proper microgrid as opposed to um a nano grid, or like I don't know like all the technical terms, but I guess like where there's multiple different generation sources and there's like a collective bus bar that's maybe instead of being rated at 400 amps, um it's like a 12,000 amp service, or it's a 2,000 amp service, and it's for like a compound or like a resort, or whatever the application, like whatever this. So I guess I'm like, in order to output power, not through this like output and input power through the same terminal, does the Solar need to operate in grid following mode? And does there need to be like does that external controller need to be able to create that frequency in order for the Solar to maintain all of its like normal functionality, I would
Okay.
say?
Let me see if I can, and hopefully I can at least address the question in its entirety, because I know this it just depends. And I know that's kind of not the answer you're probably looking at, but it
I
depends
don't
on
know.
whether the Solark is going to be the leader or if the AC coupled device is going to be the follower. In either regards, the system can be programmed to be either. We can, I mean, essentially when we're paralleled with a grid, we are the follower in that sort. So if you have another power source like a turbine or a fuel cell like you're mentioning, there are some requirements, and this question kind of popped up in the chat earlier as well, is how does AC coupling work, at least within the 30K? So it's very
Right.
similar to the 15 and the 12. We do have that gen input for that AC couple, power source, or at least an
Hmm.
input, whether that's a fuel cell, micro, or wind turbine. It could be another grid source or another inverter or something of that nature, and that's not a problem as long as that device, because we don't communicate with those devices. So as long as that device adheres to UL 1741, either SA or SB, then it does have the necessary requirements to adhere to frequency shift. And
Okay.
that's where I say it just depends. So if you want all
Yeah.
that power to flow through us and you want us to be kind of the governing body of where that power flow or what values we need, then you can AC couple that into the inverter as long as it has UL 1741, and then we do the frequency shifting based off what power is required. But
Okay.
if on the vice versa side of things, or on the other end of the spectrum, if you had, for instance, like a large inverter that you wanted to be the leader, you can program the Sol-Ark into being a follower. But just to your point, it does have to receive the necessary voltage and frequency in order for it to operate, just like an
Okay.
AC coupled system. Does
Awesome.
that
Yeah,
kind of answer your
yeah,
question?
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
that's exactly. So follow up, um, like in the case where like we're using the Sol-Ark system as like the controller, the master of the system, right? Um, and let's say for instance we have um four units in parallel. For can we use multiple generator inputs? Like, could we theoretically have like one like AC couple, a generator, and a AC wind turbine, and a hydrogen fuel cell to three different of those Sol-Arks?
Wouldn't do well anytime you do a parallel configuration. The way I kind of label it is you're making one large unit. So if you use 3 units, they need to have the same availability to the other power sources. So if you're doing it that way, I wouldn't recommend it, because you want all of them to know what's coming in, because again, they're all communicating with one another and they need to be able to balance out the output. So in that specific scenario, yes, you can have, for instance, you can have the AC coupled inverter on the gen input. You could have an external transfer switch to go between the grid and the generator to land on the grid input. And then on top of that, you could also do the fuel cell into, we're working with a fuel cell company to have a way to have that DC power land into our MPPTs. And then on
Okay.
top of that, the wind turbine, just to wrap it all together, the wind turbine, you could use an external charge controller with a dump load, connect that directly to the batteries, and then that could get all those power sources into one kind of configuration. So
Awesome. Thank
there's
you.
a lot of
Yeah.
there's a lot of
I
customization. So
heck yeah. Thanks, Dustin. I put you on the spot there. I know it was
yeah,
like a pretty obscure question, so
no
thank
worries,
thank you
man.
for that.
I like those questions. I like the curveballs.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. Hi, Dustin. Renee here again. He's kind of on our team for asking some good ones.
Yeah.
I I didn't see. Have you released the installation manual for the Sol-Ark 30 and 60 kW units?
I do not believe the installation manual is on our website just yet. Especially since we are there's some finalization going on with some of the specs, but I don't believe the installation manual's made it there, but the spec sheet should be there.
Okay, and I did see that, so I referenced it while we were on the call. My question was, it seemed to me that the battery input voltage was variable. Is that accurate?
Well, we do have a variable range at which the batteries can operate in, but there is obviously a limit to where we can go. So the battery range on the 30K specifically is from 150 volts to 550 volts. So as long as it's within that range, it still can be within operation of the inverter. Now, granted, obviously, the lower the voltage goes, the less output power we're actually going to get. So that has to be taken into consideration as well.
What's the sweet spot for both the 30 and 60K, if you know offhand?
Uh, So that's a little bit different because each battery is a little bit different as well. So some batteries are 15S as far as the number of cells, some batteries are 16S. So that variable is gonna vary slightly depending on which battery you're using. As far as the sweet spot, let me do this real quick.
And we could use Endure as an example. So
Yeah. Actually, let's do. So really, you want to sit about 300 volts. So 300 volts is about the lowest you can go to still get that 30 kilowatts of AC output.
okay.
So 300 volts is, in which, if I'm not mistaken, that's the nominal kind of voltage for these. Actually, I think it's a little bit higher, but essentially around 300 volts, if we are able to still discharge up to 100 amps, then that would at least still get you the 30,000 or 30,000 watts worth of AC output.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what about for the 60? It's probably higher then.
is. Well, on the 60, it's a little bit different because it is a higher voltage, and we do a slightly different value. So we're still doing, I mean, on the, it's about 600 volts on the, it's just double. So 600 volts for the 60K and 300 volts for the 30K. That'll still get you at 100 amps, still get you the 60 kW worth of output.
Right on. Okay, yeah, that's what I was hoping to get. So yeah, that answers my question. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Any other
Do you
questions? Any other curveballs? I
have
like
a
the zingers.
But do you think is the lead time for both units still looking at about April?
Yes, ma'am. So just as kind of what Luis kind of hinted at, there is some, some software changes that are happening to allow for better parallel communications, but we are gauging about the beginning of Q2 for the release date. But to be quite honest, we're getting a little bit more ramped up earlier than that. So there could be an earlier timeline.
Okay, that's good news.
Man.
Very good news.
Yes. I think that's all I had. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no worries. Any other questions? I know kind of last wrap up. I mean, if you have questions, by all means, I'm going to drop a couple of emails in the chat. If you have questions, by all means, shoot us an email. We're happy to help. Just to let everybody know, Luis and his team is focusing a lot on the 30K and 60K, so they're going to be your great points of contact for any questions regarding that product line. And then, as always, if there's anything else we can help with or any design questions, we're happy to help.
Yes, well, and I think I mean we want to start like selling these and putting them in project plans, and so this was really helpful one, and I really want to get our installers on board for another upcoming webinar. But when do you think the install manual will come out? I mean, if it's similar, I think I can get a lot of the information from, going through the trainings with you and your team. But I do like to have like just a reference, and I would like to read it.
For sure. Absolutely. No, I completely understand. And a lot of the times too, I mean, people are going to want to see the line diagrams. There's going to be different applications. There's going to be different, kind of use cases for this. And we do understand that. So as far as the timeline for the release of the manual, at least that's looking in the next few weeks. So a lot of that is just getting touched up as far as just making it look pretty. A lot of the, the nitty gritty information has been finalized and gone through its last parts of testing. So we're just trying to make it look pretty for the public so everybody can understand what we're putting out there.
All right, sounds good. If you want to share the ugly version with me ahead of time, that's fine too.
Yes, ma'am.
Renee will pick it and make sure everything's correct on there.
Yeah,
ask any questions.
we're an engineering company. We don't do, we make things that work and we do things a little bit differently. So we're trying a new spin to make it look pretty as well. So I'll be happy to share it if it's available at this time.
That'd be great, Dustin. Thank you. And I'll share with you, and you certainly show it to your team, some of our initial wiring schematics for our permit plans as we start putting these into projects, quoting them out, and then essentially pre-selling them, which is the plan. So we're going after it pretty hard.
Yeah, we've been, trust me, we've been getting some emails all the time in the last few weeks. People have been asking about designs and how does it work. And so we're trying to manage those expectations because, the system is over-engineered and it has a lot of capabilities. So we just want to be sure we're managing the expectations as best as possible.
Yeah, you got it. Well, we'll do what we can from this end.
Sounds good. Well, we'll get that information over to you as quickly as possible. But like I said, if there's any other questions, we're happy to help. And if you have any design questions, especially Max's, I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about it. If you have some plans for that, we'll make a plan for you and give you the best options possible.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for your time. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.